Welcome to part 3 of the Accurate House Modeling series. In this one, we'll focus on adding some nice looking timber framing to the front and the back of the house. So let's dive right into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is bring everything up a little. A to select everything, GZ100. And then I'm going to grab both porches, go into face select mode, A to select everything, E100 minus, just so the porches are not so paper thin anymore. And because the faces are all inside out now, A to select everything, Shift N to recalculate the normals. And I'm also going to select the walls back in object mode. Vertex select. I'm going to go into left view for that, X-ray mode, select everything on the bottom. And I'm going to snap it onto the porch. So E, snap it to the porch. And that way everything is a little thinner. We have a nice slab on the porches. It'll look a little better. All right, next I want to get some organization in here. I'm going to call it my collection house, and a little sloppy there. I'm going to make a new one in there and call it roof. And I'm going to put my roof parts into that collection. And I'm also going to call this one soffit. So I can close this one and make a new collection in here and call that timber framing. So I'm going to start on this corner here. I think I'm going to start with all the beams. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. I'm not going to separate beams and stringers and girders and all that stuff. I'm just going to go beams and posts. Keep it a little simpler. So within the timber framing here, I'm going to make one more collection and call it beams. And I'm going to bring my cursor to this post here. Shift S cursor to selected. And now within that beams collection, I'm going to make a new cube. Shift A mesh cube. So let's make this one fairly big. It has to be the thickness of the wall. And I want to make it look beefy and nice. It's also got to support the roof and all. So let's make this a 6x12. Which means we go on the X, 140 and 292 on the Z. I'm going to make sure I'm in vertex snapping up here. I'm going to go GB to activate the snap base, grab my corner and snap it to the corner of the house. All right, so for the connection here, I'm going to go with a mortise and tenon joint with a diminished housing. I'm not going to model the mortise and tenon joint because you won't be able to see it anyway, but I'm going to model the diminished housing. So that means I'm going to grab all my vertices on this front here, and I'm going to bring it back for now. GYB, grab this vertex and snap it to the post. And then diminished housing means I'm going to grab my bottom vertices here, GY25 minus. So it sits about an inch on the post. So 25 millimeters or an inch. And then it slopes up to nothing again. So that is called a diminished housing. Now I'm going to deal with the posts later on. I'm going to get all the beams in first because there's going to be a beam here. And everywhere we have a connection. So I'm going to do all the beams first and then adjust the posts to what we get. Let me turn on cavity here. I'm going to be a little proactive here because there's going to be a lot of reusing assets and copying them around. So I want to prep this properly. I'm going to go into local view. Now, first and foremost, I think in object mode, yeah, I got to apply my scale. Control A, apply my scale first. I'm going to go back into edge select. I'm going to select all the edges on both ends and one along the top. Right click mark seam, A to select everything, U unwrap. And that way I have a proper UV unwrap on it. Well, mostly proper. I mean, technically there could be one less seam on the ends, but because we're not going to see the ends, I'm not going to worry about it. So we have the UV unwrap on it. I also want to throw the bevel on there already. So I'm going to add a bevel modifier. I'm going to give this 2 millimeters, 4 segments. And I'm going to harden the normals, and that will soften up the segments here a little. Now, for the sake of easier snapping and moving things around, I'm going to deactivate the bevel for now. In object and in edit mode. And then once I've copied everything around and everything is in place, then I can reactivate the bevel on everything. I'm also going to rename this thing, call it beam. And I think I'm just going to go with the axis. So Y in this case. And that one is already finished. So now I can copy it around, and I need one here on this outside corner here, and they're all going to be the same. So I can make linked duplicates. So I'm going to go Alt D X, snap to this corner, and I'm going to go Alt D X, snap to this outside corner, and Alt D X, snap to this corner. Great. Now these are in place. I'm going to take my first one again. Now I'm going to go Shift D, exclude the Z-axis, and bring this over here a little. RZ90. And I'm going to snap this on here first. So GB, I'm going to grab, it's behind an object. So GY, bring this back here so I can access that vertex. GB, grab it and snap it to the corner here. That way it's already sitting on that post. Now in vertex mode, grab this end. And I got to snap it to this post here. GX, snap it to here. And the bottom two vertices, GX 25 minus. Okay, so I'm going to rename that to beam X. And I can copy it over to here, but I think this part of the house is a little longer. So I'm going to go Shift D, X, snap it there, GX 25. So I'm sitting in there already. Yeah, it's a little longer. So I'm just going to grab this GXB with that vertex onto the post. Cool. That's a good step in the right direction. So now I want to have a big beam across here. And that one's gonna be a little bigger. So I'm gonna select my two posts here. Shift S, cursor to selected. That brings the cursor right in the middle between these two. I'm gonna go Shift A, add a new cube. And this one's gonna be a 6 by 18. What are we gonna do? Yeah, let's do a 6 by 18. So on the Y axis, we go 140. And on the Z, we go 445. I can scale it on the X axis a little, just so it's closer to the posts already. And Control A to apply my scale. Rename it to beam. Let's call it front main. And I'm going to bring it to the front of the beam here, GYB. Grab this corner and snap it there. And then I'm going to bring it up. So in front view now, I gotta snap it all the way to this little triangle here. So I'm gonna go GX and snap it to that end of the triangle. And the same thing on the other end. GX, snap it to the triangle. Now I gotta position it first. So I wanna have it GZ about half the height of the other beam here. Roughly about that. I can eyeball that. Bring it down a little bit so it sits in the post nicely, and we'll cut it out there later. Okay, that looks good. Now in edit mode, I'm gonna make an edge loop there, right where the triangle sits. And now in vertex mode, X-ray, I'm gonna select those vertices there and switch over to edge snapping. GG and snap to the inside of the roof. And do the same thing on the inside, on the other side. GG, snap to the inside of the roof. Now I'm also gonna shift select one of the other beams, Control C, and copy the modifier. So the bevel is already there, so I can reactivate that later. And now I wanna have a little bit of a radius cut out in here. So I'm gonna bring my cursor to it. Actually, I can leave the cursor where it is. I'm going to go Shift A, Mesh, Cylinder. I'm going to make this fairly detailed. I'm going to give it 128 vertices so it's nice and smooth. And that way I don't need a subsurface modifier. And I'm going to rotate it on X by 90. And then go in front view. I'm going to scale it on X. Do something like that. I'm going to go into wireframe quickly and see where my edge loop is on the beam and make sure they don't overlap. So I'm going to bring this down a little so I have a bit of a separation between them two. And that looks good for now. Shift select the beam, Control minus Pull tool will make a nice cut. And then I can deactivate the cylinder from the viewport for now. I'm going to leave the Boolean active for now because there's going to be some supports later. And I want to make sure that I can adjust the radius if I needed to. But for now, that looks pretty good already. So now I am going to bring my cursor there. Cursor to selected. And that should be lining up with the peak. So let's Shift A, Mesh, Cube. And that one is going to be, let's make it a 2x12. So on X, 292. And on Y, 89. Let's go into front view. I'm going to make a loop cut right down the center of this thing. And bring it up, GZ. Can do that in wireframe mode. I'm going to go back to vertex snapping for a sec here. And GZB. And snap that to the tip of the peak on the inside. And then on the bottom one, I'm going to GZ, bring them down a bit. Grab just the outside corners. Bring them up a bit. And then the middle one, I'm going to bevel to give it a nice little radius. Yeah, that looks kind of neat. So now all I gotta do is go back into wireframe mode, edge snapping, GG, snap those corners to the inside of the roof. I'm gonna Control A, apply my scale. I'm gonna rename it to timber front vertical. And now I want to have two more that go on a diagonal. Doesn't necessarily have to be a 45, just something that looks good. So I'm gonna Shift A, add another cube here. And that one is going to be a 2x, I think I'm gonna make this a 2x10. So let's make a 241. Just a little bit smaller than the main timber that goes vertically. And that way it looks a little more loosened up and a little different. I'm gonna go into front view. Roughly around the cursor, and I'm gonna switch the pivot point through the 3D cursor and rotate it. Just so something like this. This is more decorative than structural, so as long as it looks good, we're happy with it. I'll make another loop cut right down the middle. And then I'm gonna try to line up this vertex with this intersection here. So roughly around there. That looks good. Oop, maybe I should have done that in object mode so I don't just distort the whole thing. Okay, that looks good. Now I just got to bring the corners to the beam. So select these vertices. I'm still in edge snapping, so GG. Bring them to the beams. GG. There we go. And these ones up top, they go back to the inside. Bring them in a little. GG there. GG. GG. Oh, probably have to do these individually. Make sure I didn't crush it. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so again, I'm gonna do some UV unwrapping first on all three of them. I'm gonna select the ends. Nobody's ever gonna see them. And one like that. R, mark seam, A, U, unwrap. Same on the middle one. Alt select these ones down here. One on the back. Mark seam, all you unwrap. And I don't think I've done the main beam on the front yet. Mark seam, all you unwrap. I'm also going to do the bevel right away. So I'm going to select this one, shift select this one, select the beam, Control C, copy modifiers. We have the bevel available already. Now I just got to copy this one over to the other side. And the pivot point is still the 3D cursor. So I can select this one, Alt D, cancel the movement, RZ 180. And there we go. That looks good. Now I want to do a little change to the roof and the soffit because I want to have the soffit within the cathedral ceiling here a little thicker. So I'm going to select my roof quickly and I'm going to select these 4 faces on the inside of the beam. P to separate the selection. Back in object mode, select those new faces. Shift select the soffit, Control J. And now on the soffit, I'm going to go into face select and select the ones in front of all the beams. P, separate the selection. Back in object mode, select the new faces, shift select the roof and Control J to join those faces back to the roof. So back on my soffit, I'm going to go into local view. Edge select, A to select everything, M to merge by distance, and that'll remove all the vertices we've created here. And I'm going to select the diagonal edges here and Control X to dissolve them. I'm going to make a bunch of loop cuts here. Vertex snapping, one on this side, snap it to the top of the beam. Same on the other side, snap to the top of the beam. And then I gotta go in here and make one loop cut on the inside of the beam. All right, so face mode. Select all the faces that we've just basically created with our loop cuts here. And I'm gonna go Alt E, extrude faces along normals, 89. Now I just gotta deal with this little corner here, but as we've done so often now in front view, vertex. Now let's select these vertices, GG, snap them to the edges just to bring them up and make them horizontal again. Oop. Same on this side, GG. And that way we have a bit of a thicker soffit in there. That looks good. All right, now we can do the posts. I'm going to start on this one here and start cutting in the diminished housing. So the first thing I got to do is clear the shared data because they're all from the blockouts and they all share the same data and I don't want that anymore. So I'm going to clear that one, make a new collection in the timber framing and call that posts. And then this post goes in that collection and I'm going to rename it to post corner. All right, so now let's go back to vertex snapping. And first I got to apply my scale here, then go into edit mode and make a bunch of loop cuts here. So I'm going to need a horizontal loop cut snapped to the underside of the beams. Then I'm going to need a vertical one snapped to the diminished housing there. And same to the inside of the beam. And the same thing in the other direction. And now I can start extruding my faces. I'm going to go back to face mode and select this one here. Alt E to extrude manifold. I'm just going to bring this in a hair. I'm going to select my top edge here and snap it back to the top vertex here. GX snap. And the bottom one, I'm going to bring backwards. GX there. And that way I have my housing in there. and we're gonna get rid of the double vertices in a second. I'm gonna do the same thing with this face first. Extrude manifold, bring it in just a hair. Edges, this top edge, GY snap on the outside and GY snap on the inside. A to select everything, M merge by distance, and that gets rid of 4 vertices. All right, I'm gonna go into local view now and out of X-ray. And now I gotta UV unwrap this. So I gotta select the edges here and one on the inside, everything on the top. We're never gonna see it. Same on this housing here. One down the length. Select the whole outer edges on the bottom. R, mark seam, A, U, unwrap. Out of local view, shift select the beam, Control C to copy the modifiers. And now if I were to go to my modifier section and hold Alt while I click on the modifier section, look at that. That looks nice. That looks really nice. But I'm gonna Alt click again to deactivate the bevel on all of them. So now this one here, I can Alt D X and snap to the outside here on the block out. I'm gonna Alt click and select the block out post, X to delete. And our corner post, Control M, X. Oh, gotta change the pivot point back to medium point. Control M, X, enter. And that mirrors it on the X-axis. And that way it's already in the right position and the right way around. Now these posts here are a little different because we have that pocket here for the main beam. But I'm gonna do the diminished housing pockets first. So I'm gonna bring this into the posts collection, clear the shared data. I'm gonna call this post middle. Now in edge select, Control R. In case you hear some snoring or slobbery noises, I apologize for that. My dog is sleeping behind me. Let's go into X-ray mode and do our edge loops again. Go into face mode. I'm just gonna go into local view. That makes it a little easier. Now I have 2 faces here. Alt E extrude manifold. Bring them in a little. Just like this one. Alt E manifold. Bring it in a little. And then go back to edge mode and snap again. And now I'm gonna make another loop cut here. And this one can just be extruded all the way in, because that's just a beam pocket. So Alt E, extrude manifold, and snap it all the way to the back. A to select everything, M, merge by distance. Yeah, that's a nice post. So gotta UV unwrap it again. So I'm gonna select everything on the top. This is an at times very repetitive workflow, but that's just the way it is sometimes. Right click, mark seam, Alt U unwrap. I'm going to shift select this post here, Control C, copy the modifiers. And then just like I did before, I can Alt D X, snap this over here, Alt select the blockout post, get rid of it, and then Control M to mirror it on the X-axis. And we're almost done on the front now. I'm going to make another collection in the timber framing and call it supports. And I want to have a bit of a diagonal support up here. So one more time, Shift A mesh cube. And those are just gonna be 2x8s. So I'm gonna do 190 by 89. Make this a lot shorter. And in front view, I'm gonna bring it over here and rotate it by 45 degrees. Control A to apply the scale, vertex mode, X-ray. Go to edge snapping, GG, and snap them to the posts. Same here, GG, GG. Gotta hold Alt here to go past the origin point. And I can already see I need to adjust the Boolean a little because I want to have a bit of a flat surface here after the support. Before I do that though, quickly, I'm just gonna unwrap this, select everything there, one on the back, mark the seam, AU unwrap. Okay, let's make sure it's nice in position. That looks good. I am going to call this support, let's just call it 45 because it's on a 45-degree angle. And I've got to bring one over here, so I'm going to switch back the pivot point to the 3D cursor. Before that, I'm going to shift select the post, Control C, and copy the bevel modifier onto it. And then I can Alt D, cancel the movement, RZ 180. And that brings it over here. So now I got to go back to my main beam here and bring the cylinder back. Back into front view, zoom in a little, and I'm just gonna scale that one on the x-axis in a little. Do something like that, just so I have a nice bit of a flat surface before the radius comes in. And that looks good. Cylinder out of the way again. Cool, I like it. Welcome to Knobs and Bolts, the ever-growing asset pack for high-detail, photorealistic decorative hardware for your next ArchViz project. Compatible with both Cycles and Eevee. Decorative hardware might seem like a small detail, but it has the power to completely transform a scene. From farmhouse chic to modern minimalist, a well-chosen knob or pull can dramatically change the look and feel of a scene. It not only adds functionality, but also enhances the overall aesthetic, tying your design together seamlessly. Without these elements, even the most beautiful render can feel incomplete. With them, your designs gain character, depth, and a polished, professional finish. Transform your renders today with the perfect finishing touch by adding this asset pack to your library. Knobs and Bolts, decorative hardware for ArchViz and Blender, is available now. Download today and elevate your projects to the next level. Links in the description. So now we need timber framing on the backside of the house too. But that's going to be fairly easy because we're just going to reuse what we have. So for starters, I'm going to select those two beams and that post on the corner. Go to top view. I'm going to Shift D, bring it over here, R180. Switch the pivot point back to median point, RZ180. And I'm going to line it up with the post here. I should go back to vertex snapping for that. Alt select the cube 004, get rid of it, because that was just a block out. And now I can go to my, my beams here and adjust them. So I'm going to take this end, GY, snap it to the corner. And here, now, on this one, this is going to be another special post, and I'm not going to have a diminished housing here. So I'm going to select this beam here. And I'm going to bring these vertices out. So we have a 90-degree angle everywhere again. Select them all, GX, and snap them to the post. And then I can select all these here. And I'm going to go Shift D, B, grab the bottom corner there and snap it to this post. Alt, select the pole cube 006. James Bond is next. delete it. Now on this end, now I gotta bring these out again, GX25 minus. Select them all, GX, grab the top corner and snap it to the post. And on this one here, this one goes all the way into the house, where I have to make a wall opening first. So I'm going to select my wall here, into face mode, X-ray. And I'm stuck in a wall here. I'm going to select all these faces here, right click, bridge faces, and the top and bottom one can go away. In object mode, I'm going to go back to my beam here, select the whole end and snap it to this wall here. So GY, boom. So that when we're in the house, we see the beam go through. And once we do the inside at some point, we're going to deal with the Z fighting that we have going on right here within that wall. But for now, we can just leave it. That's perfectly fine. Okay, so I need one more post and beam right there. I'm going to shift select these two here. I'm going to go shift D, B, grab the bottom corner again and snap it to that post. And then I can go Control M, X, enter. GXB, snap it back in place. Alt select, there's James Bond. You just got deleted. And that's already in place. And that's pretty much the backside already. Now I just want to have supports everywhere. So I'm going to go back to the front and grab one of the supports. And Shift D, Y. Actually, I could have made a link copy, but that's okay. So I'm just going to line it up, GY, so it's centered under the beam. And GZ, I'm going to bring it down first so I have access to that vertex. GZB, and snap it there. And then I got to Alt D, bring it over there. RZ90 minus GYB. And just bring this in place so it sits centered under the beam. Shift select them. Alt D, X, RZ90 minus. And again, this workflow can be very repetitive at times because it's just copying and moving things around, but that's just the way it is. All right, so now I just got to make a pocket here on that beam, on this post. So select this post and it's the last one left. I'm just going to go M house timber framing, put that in posts collection. And I'm going to call this post. We already have middle, so let's call it intersect. Doesn't really matter. Control A to apply the scale. I'm going to go Shift, select this one here. Control C to copy the modifiers. And then I'm going to Control R, bring a loop cut. And I'm going to need one vertical right there. Go to face mode, Alt E, extrude manifold, and snap it back. And now these beams can sit nicely on that post. Sweet. Quickly UV unwrap it. This one here, arc seam, all you unwrap. Alrighty. So now I want to do the same thing on the soffit that I did on the front. So I'm going to select the roof, go into face mode, select all these inside faces here, P to separate the selection. In object mode, select the new object, select the soffit, Control J. And on the soffit, select this face, and the one behind the beam here. P to separate the selection, select it, Shift select the roof, Control J. And then again, On the soffit, I'm gonna go into local view, vertex, all M by distance. I'm gonna dissolve the diagonal edges again. And here I actually don't need to do any loop cutting. So I can just circle select, let's go into face mode, circle select all these faces, Alt E, extrude along normals, 89. And then one more time, hopefully the last time, we can select these and GG, snap them to the top of the beam, GG, snap, and Bob's your uncle. Now we can go and select everything, all the beams, all the posts, and all the supports. Go to the modifiers and hold Alt while reactivating them. And that'll reactivate them on all of them. And now that looks really, really nice. Same on the front. We have a little bevel everywhere. We see our diminished housing, the beam pockets. So let's just go into render view and just deactivate the scene lights in the scene world, see what it looks like. And I'm just gonna grab some random wood texture that I have in my asset browser here. Yeah, wood 46 should be all right. Check the unwrap. No, that's all unwrapped properly. Don't I have the scale applied? Oh, the scale is not applied on these ones. That's why it looks funky. But I think I have shared data, so I'm gonna clear the shared data and I'm gonna Control A, apply the scale. Now, was I a bad boy on more of these? Yeah, on those ones too. Control A, apply scale. Control apply scale. So now if I go back to my post and UV unwrap that, actually it looks somewhat decent. I gotta adjust the scale of that a little. It is so easy to forget to apply the scale sometimes. It's just, it happens. Okay, let's go back to the layout. This one actually is inside out too. All Shift N. Okay, so let's select everything again. All the beams, all the posts, all the supports. I'm gonna Shift select the one with the material already. Control L and link the materials. Now overall, not too bad. Just gonna adjust a couple here. To start off with, I'm going to adjust the scale on the texture itself a little. It's like a 4 or something. That already looks a little better. I'll go back to the UV editor and I want to adjust these ones here. All U unwrap. There we go. Because I cleared the shared data. What I can do here is I can select this one here, Shift select this one, Control L and copy the UV maps. Mind you, these ones look a little... I don't know if I like that. Let's scale these in a little. Looks a little better. Let's make sure everything looks good on the backside. I'm gonna rotate my HDRI so I can actually see something here. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. The one thing I'm gonna do though is I'm going to throw a hue saturation value into the timber framing and just bring the value way down. I want this dark. And I don't want displacement on there. Let's see what the difference will be. I don't see a difference. I don't need displacement on those ones. I'm gonna bump the bump out down to 0.5. I might change the texture later on. I don't know yet. Not sure yet if I like this one. All right, so that looks good for the posts and beams. Now I just want to have the same material on the soffit, especially the ones that I extruded already. So I'm gonna select my soffit here. I'm gonna get rid of the material that's on there right now. And I got to UV unwrap it first, so I'm going to go into local view on that. I'm going to get rid of all these faces on the backside here that are facing the house, because I will never need those again. And they won't be visible. So X to delete those. And I'm going to go into edge mode and do some nice UV unwrapping here. On these ones here, I'm just going to go all the way around and one in the middle there, so it'll unwrap nicely. Do I need another? So mark these as seam, then go to the back side. Pretty much all I gotta do here, mark seam, all U unwrap. And go out of local view, shift select the beam, Control L to link the materials. And let's just see here. I mean, I got the texture overlay active. That's why you see a little bit here. It's definitely a little big. So I'm gonna go to UV editing, A to select everything, and just scale this up a little. Check on the front here. I'm gonna select these ones first. A to select everything. So hard to see. I'm gonna turn the overlays off. Scale this up a little. Do something like that. And then on the back side here, I think these are going the wrong way. Definitely need to be rotated by 90 degrees. And these ones definitely to 90 degrees. Almost like I made a seam too many. Oh, I should have made a seam right there. That's why. That's why this is a little skewed. So mark that as a seam. And just re-unwrap that. You unwrap. We got these going. Seem to be going the right way. So let's just select these ones here. Those faces are 90. Out of local view and out of the UV editor. And that looks a lot better already. Now with this video already being fairly long, I'm gonna postpone the windows and doors and all that to the next one. But the timber framing looks good. I'm not sure about the texture yet. I might change that down the line. But for now, this is good to have as a placeholder at least. And then we can always adjust it later. Everything's UV unwrapped properly, so whatever we throw on it should be displayed properly. But overall, I'm happy how this turned out. One more thing I could do in our scene collection is I'm gonna add a plane, bring that to the origin and just scale it up. Just so we have a nice ground plane on there. And now if we go under film and turn off transparent, so we have a bit of a background. This almost looks like a house. Yeah, with a ground plane and a nice HDRI in the background at least, it already looks so much better. So the timber framing, I'm happy with it. It looks good. And now it's on to the windows and doors, and we'll tackle that next time. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.